Hey everybody, hope you're having a great day so far. Welcome to this Tuesday in Social Studies. Today you are going to obviously pull out your device, start working on your warm-up. Your warm-up today is to list as many words that come to mind with the topic World War II. I'm sure you'll have many varied answers for this, and you're going to go over those with the sub before we move forward here today. So go ahead and do your warm-up, and then we will go ahead and start on the key leaders in World War II vocabulary sheet that the sub will either hand to you or that is already in your baskets for you to go ahead and grab. So let's go ahead and get our names on those and get ready to go over that as a class together. Okay? Okay, we are going to go over your World War II vocabulary. So go ahead and have that vocabulary and key leaders sheet out on your desk. We're going to go through this as a class, and then the second part of class, you are going to take some World War II beginnings notes, and you're going to do that on your own. So the PowerPoint is going to be accessible to you, so you're going to open that and take your own notes. If you don't finish those, that is homework. Remember, you need to be keeping track of your notes and keeping track of everything we're doing in class for your test next Friday. Okay, so World War II vocabulary, let's go through some of these. Most of these might be reviewed to you from last year, but we need to go ahead and review those so that you understand those as we move forward here. So a dictator, remember a dictator is a leader who rules with total authority, often in a cruel or brutal manner. I'm sure one of those people that immediately comes to mind for you is Adolf Hitler at this time. So dictator is your first vocabulary term. Second is a political system headed by a dictator that calls for extreme nationalism and racism, and that is fascism, okay? So similar but not exactly the same as a dictator, okay? They are a type of dictator. So imagine it being like dictator with fascism as a type there. Benito Mussolini is somebody who practices that fascist type of rule in Italy during World War II. Next vocabulary term is anti-Semitism, and you know that is hatred of Jews. You had that vocabulary term last year. So anti-Semitism was hatred of Jews. This ultimately leads to the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews were killed during this war. Next, we have appeasement. Remember, when you appease somebody, you're kind of doing it even though you don't really want to, maybe. So when you appease somebody, appeasement is accepting demands in order to avoid conflict. So you might be kind of shaking hands with the person saying, okay, I'll do this, even though you may not really want to. Next is blitzkrieg, and that is the name given to sudden, violent, offensive attacks that the Germans used in World War II. It's known as lightning warfare. Blitzkrieg. Next, you have internment camp. Internment camp are the detention centers where Japanese Americans, Italians, and Germans were moved and confined to during World War II. So places where maybe they would send people who they thought were spies for the enemy, where some Jews were sent in Germany during the Holocaust. Those are internment camps. Not necessarily a concentration camp or a place where people were killed, like a death camp. That's different. An internment camp was just kind of a place of holding, a place where people were sent so that the leaders and so that the people that were in charge knew exactly where those types of people were. All right, genocide. Genocide is the deliberate destruction of a racial, political, or cultural group. That is called genocide. The genocide that occurs during World War II is the Holocaust. This is not the only genocide that has happened in history. The reason we learn about these genocides is because we do not ever want something like this to happen in our country or to happen again in the world. Genocide is a really, really terrible thing. Okay, the Holocaust. If you've heard me saying this but don't know exactly what that is, the Holocaust is the name given to the mass slaughter of Jews and other groups by the Nazis during World War II. And here's a picture of some Jews that were in a concentration camp. Very terrible, terrible conditions. Many Jews were taken from their homes, discriminated against, and were ultimately killed by the Nazis during the war. Okay, island hopping. This is another term you need to know. This is a strategy that is used during World War II that called for attacking and capturing key islands and using those islands as bases to leapfrog to others. This was used mainly in the war in the Pacific, which the United States is a part of. So if you notice this map kind of down in the bottom right-hand part of your screen, you'll see several different areas where there were different countries that were capturing key islands and moving from island to island in order to capture maybe some larger territory or attack the enemy. Okay, a kamikaze. During World War II, a Japanese suicide pilot whose mission was to crash into his target. That would be known as a kamikaze. There were several kamikazes that were used during Pearl Harbor and the attack on Pearl Harbor that happened December 7th, 1941. The Japanese suicide pilots would go knowing that they probably would not be returning home. And we'll be talking about that in the next couple of days when we actually talk about the attack on Pearl Harbor. Okay, at this point in time, you need to flip over your World War II vocabulary sheet, and you will see the different leaders that you need to know for your test. And just know in general as we're talking about the war in the next couple of weeks. So the first one are the Allied powers. Remember, there's the Axis powers and then there's the Allied powers. We're focusing right here in this chart on the Allied powers. So the leader at the time for the United States is President Roosevelt. Remember FDR, he brings in the New Deal. Things are kind of looking up here for the United States, and he helps to get us there. So President Roosevelt is leading our country during World War II, and the type of government we have, obviously, is a democracy. Now, Great Britain has Prime Minister Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill has a constitutional monarchy. If you remember correctly, a constitutional monarchy is when you have a king or queen, or you have somebody who is in rule like a monarchy. But there's a constitution, a set of rules that they have to abide by as they are in rule. Joseph Stalin is the Soviet Union leader. Remember, Russia has fallen during the Russian Revolution in 1918, and right now Russia is known as the Soviet Union. It becomes an entire new country. So Joseph Stalin is the head of that, and we know that the Soviets are communist. Now, at the bottom, you have the Axis powers. We're going to look at this chart and see who our three kind of main people that we need to know about are for World War II here. Obviously, Adolf Hitler, we know that he is the ruler in Germany at the time, and he is a dictator. The type of government they have during World War II is called Nazism. Remember, the Nazis are the group of people that are kind of the army that are trained under Hitler, and the Nazis come about, and that is the type of government that they have. It's extreme totalitarian fascism. So it's just a huge, one person takes control, they do whatever he says, and if you don't, you're basically killed. Our next Axis powers leader is Benito Mussolini, and he is the head leader of Italy. Italy, they practice a fascist type of government. So that is in a way where a dictator does take control, and he has his own way of kind of telling everybody how things are going to be set and run in the country. Mussolini and Hitler do get along at first, and then things go sour towards the end there. Now, the next Axis powers leader you need to know is Emperor Hirohito, and he is the head of Japan. Now, what makes his type of government different than Mussolini's is that he has a heavy concentration on the military. So he really believes that the military takes reign and takes control there when he is leader. They do have a fascist type government, so he is a dictator. People have to follow what he says. And Prime Minister Hideki Tojo is one of those people that works right underneath of him. And Tojo is the one who actually ends up making a decision to drop the bombs on Pearl Harbor against the United States, December 7th, 1941. At this point in time, we have finished completing your leaders chart, and you have just gone over the vocabulary with me. You are going to actually go through and draw some pictures with your vocabulary and write a caption to show me that you understand that vocabulary. I will be checking that vocabulary on Wednesday, so make sure that you have that completed if for homework possibly tonight if you don't finish up today. You are going to complete your beginning of World War II guided notes today. The PowerPoint can be accessed with the tiny URL that has been provided. So you are going to go to that and go ahead and start recording your notes down. This is what your handout looks like. So you need to go ahead and make sure you have one of those on your desk. Talks a little bit about Hitler's background, talks about Japan, the US, how the war started, different warfare and invasions, a couple battles that are important for you to know, touches on the Holocaust, and then how the United States actually ends up joining the war. So you are going to go ahead and go through those for the rest of class, fill in your notes, and you also need to make sure that you do those pictures with captions for your vocabulary. If you do not finish any of that today at some point in class, you need to make sure that you finish that for homework, as I will be checking it tomorrow at the beginning of class. Have a great day. Make sure that you are well behaved for the sub, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.